think this school is different in the way that we have the traditional classroom, and at the same time we have the open learning space. And it's the mix of the traditional classroom and the open learning space that makes it unique. In the open learning space, the teacher focuses on group work and on the students' creative work. It's important that the students get a feel of independency, that they're independent, and it's their ideas that shine through in the products that they produce when they work in groups. But of course we need the traditional classroom on the other hand for the student discussion, for the teacher presentation and so forth. But it's the mix of the two that makes this place unique.
It gives me extra energy to go around and actually see the sun outside, and people are a bit happier, I'd say, because there's so much light instead of the normal darker appearances of other schools. So it gives a better morale at working and also socializing.
The students here are very open-minded, and I think that's part of the DNA here. I mean, when you on your everyday basis can see your fellow students and the teachers, you get a certain mindset, and it's about being open towards your fellow students and your friends. So that's part of the DNA here. It invites you to be open, this school, because it is an open school with the idea of transparency.
Of course, it takes a bit of getting used to when you start, because there's a lot of noise and a lot of people, and there's constantly people walking through your classes or next to you or something like that. So you have to get used to that, and you have to learn not to get distracted by it, but you learn that pretty quickly. It's just 1 month and you can see right through it.
It seems to me that our educational systems seem to treat all places as though they were the same. So you can sit in a classroom and you'll learn the same sort of subjects, whatever school you're in, whatever region of a country you're in, whatever country you're in, whatever country in Europe. It's generally the same. You learn things that it doesn't really matter where you are. So I guess what I'm trying to do is reverse that notion to say that each place is different. What it is about that place that we can learn something that's different from other places, and when we get to that level of nuance, we can see, we can start to differentiate between education, which is a standardized, deliverable phenomenon, to something which is much more nuanced and is about that particular place.
If you want to really enjoy the healing power of the earth, you can't be in a room with a floor and cement underneath. You have to go right out there and feel it. And the wind and the rain, all of these things, if you really truly believe this, not everybody does, but we do. So our school year is built on a lot of time outside of the school.
I think that place-based learning is particularly good at allowing us the opportunity and time to be able to identify what's happening in groups when they're getting on with tasks. You're able to identify those people who are participating by observing. You're able to direct, sometimes quite subtly, sometimes quite directly. We're all storytellers. We like to tell stories. And I think that good education is simply about telling our stories.
Storytelling, until recently, we never had a written language. So Everything had to be oral. You had to be a good listener, but you also had to be a good storyteller. And we believe anything worth learning can be put in a story. And there's old stories with messages that we should learn. There's modern, so that's a spectacular. Slahaya is like news stories, modern stories. And you can make up stories. Like there's all kinds of creative storytelling that we will do. But the key thing is hidden in the story is all kinds of powerful messages. It could be rules for living, it could be place names, it could be genealogy. There's many things that will be in a good story. And we teach the children stories.
Essentially, as human beings, we have those skills. I think they can be developed. I think the type of story we tell is important. So it's not just about being good storytellers, it's about being good storytellers about particular things. And so I think we need to have better stories about issues to do, like, for example, with climate change.
And one of the things about a teaching tool is if you forget something, then there's a good chance you'll remember it, because you usually remember where the story started. So you retell the story, either aloud or just in your head, and many times that missing piece will pop back in. So the more ways you teach a story, and then get them to retell it. And retell it at gatherings, retell it in the community, retell it at home, is the story then is loaded with all kinds of knowledge. Stories are absolutely powerful, so we make time to teach storytelling. When they come back from somewhere, they tell the story. We make stories. We practice storytelling in the classroom and in our gatherings, because it is just a natural way that has evolved for thousands of years, and if it's worked so well, why not integrate it into our school system, which we do.
If you're looking for disruption, and if disruption equals good education, which in my view often it does, then it's much easier to achieve naturally without conditioning it. And again, back to the stories, it's a lot to do with the stories that we told. Standing around places like the oak tree, standing around telling stories. Those stories for them were powerful then and remain powerful in their lives.
The initial starting point for us were our own children. We were inspired by our kids to embark on this journey. We relocated to Hamburg, having previously resided in Berlin. My wife and I made the move to Hamburg when our older children reached school age, and we were in search of a school. We're interested in exploring alternatives. And to make a long story short, we looked at pretty much every type of school there is, including public school, various private schools. We changed schools over a period of 5 years, constantly seeking a better fit, but unfortunately we actually became more and more dissatisfied with our findings and the limited options available to us. It was a challenging and exhausting process, but we remained determined to find the right school for our needs and aspirations. Teaching, 45-minute intervals, breaks and no talking, and in certain cases it was nearly worse at private schools, that the kids were not permitted to consume beverages during the class, and similar matters, which was actually quite detrimental for us, yes. And then the notion began to take hold within us that in some manner, that cannot be the case. That is the entirety of the situation. And then my spouse conducted interviews, and in one interview she stated that she would be interested in establishing a location for youngsters where they can experience freedom.
Our actions there are not socially acceptable in Germany. Not yet, although it is normal for us that children decide for themselves about their lives and what they learn, when they learn it, and with whom they learn it. This is democracy for us.
The main, I believe, of Sudbury training is, and this has nothing to do with school, that we view children as fully fledged human beings. Regular education sees children as unguarded individuals who need to be controlled and guided. We see children as unguarded individuals. And we also observe in school that children from the age of 4 are capable of making their own decisions, can determine for themselves what they do. And when kids are treated with respect, they also experience a strong sense of responsibility.
Following the interview, individuals contacted us and forwarded material to us from Sudbury Valley School. And we were in the middle of a skiing holiday when we opened the mail and were completely taken aback, feeling a sense of panic and shock, because everything that was in there was what we always believed school should be like. That adults and children meet each other at eye level, and that they simply create a place together, where they develop rules together and all such things. That strike precisely captured the exact vision we had always envisioned, yet had not yet articulated in language.
For me, the major distinction was primarily that I was unable to remain seated and attentive, focused effectively in the initial year of school. That was not my point yet, and then I proceeded to go to school and I simply had to unfold myself, and during the initial year, I just played with dolls, because that was significant to me at that particular time. And not sit around and torture myself, have a headache.
So I am aware that my mother mentioned that when I transferred to a different school in the 5th grade, she noticed that I had developed a considerable amount of interest in many things once again, and somehow regained my interest, wanting to buy books that are somehow connected to my path. And before that, there was not really any interest in anything at all.
I would categorize our journey of parenthood into 2 separate factions. Once, those who have already recognized the regular school as unsuitable for themselves and desire something different for their children from the start. And then there are, I believe, also the families who initially send their children to traditional school and then say, okay, something is not working there, we need an alternative.
In our organization, the social aspect holds great significance. It is the social interaction between me and all individuals around me, encompassing every person, that truly constitutes the primary component and plays a pivotal role in shaping our dynamics and fostering a sense of belonging and connection.
And parents who also permit their children these experiences, I would say, even if they are not favorable, but who are present and who have faith in their child, with life and the organization of their own life and the responsibility for it, and at the same time being able to handle everything that goes with it, I believe are definitely correct at school.
But what we see, we start with school time, with the student mail-out week. And then parents see that during the flower leaf week, things change in a child. How he looks at things, how he handles things, what he tells. Often parents who initially have doubts become more and more convinced through the effect on their own child and think more and more about it. Sometimes it also has a significant impact on the parents themselves, for instance. Parents who are themselves in a job where they are not happy. When a child is in school, he can determine his own goals and what he wants to accomplish. They also contemplate whether they desire this position and what it entails, and whether they require to pursue an alternative course of action. It often triggers things.
This school is opened to learning opportunities or learning spaces, especially in the areas of communication, self-competence, that children and young people are allowed to learn who they are, that they are allowed to embark on the journey of encountering themselves in others, that they are allowed to grow through various conflicts, that they can clarify things, that there is nothing where they are forced to do so.
In my opinion, another extremely significant aspect of the Sudbury School is that the students are not evaluated or judged by any means. The single evaluation or assessment that occurs is the self-evaluation or assessment process. Design and freedom of learning, that's the feeling in a certain way.
To continuously acquire knowledge, while also making a deliberate effort to sit down and concentrate on a single task during specific moments of time. However, the desires of a person are crucial.
The students did not want to go home, and we were considering what would be a suitable alternative to say, as it is now the end of school and we have, so the rule is, during the final 15 minutes I am permitted to sing a closing song over the loudspeaker system. And all individuals are permitted to participate in singing along. And in the meantime, every person has a duration of 3 minutes to pack up their belongings and just leave, because the singing is really terrible and unpleasant to listen to.
Children acquire responsibility by being accountable for their actions. And if they are able to do that in their 4th year, then they are able to do it anywhere. They are able to do that for their whole life long.
In my opinion, if you have to describe AGRA to someone who is not familiar with AGRA, then that is a way in which suitable assignments are searched for together with the child in a collaborative manner, ensuring a comprehensive understanding of the subject that suit the child but also bring them in a meaningful context. I think that meaningfulness is really the key to tapping into intrinsic motivation.
Children are actually their own project writers with us. So they come up with a topic themselves, and then they also discuss with others how to delve into that topic. And that can truly be anything. I currently have a student who is working on designing their very own house. With others, he devised the idea to make that house as sustainable as possible and wanted to see how we can achieve it. And actually make that house self-sufficient as well. And in this manner, we attempt to bring a small amount of depth together. And the further a student progresses in the process, the more depth comes and the more he becomes more specific towards what he actually wants.
I have the freedom to select what I want to learn, such as I previously pursued an interest in pixel art, as I was immensely curious about it at that time, because I had witnessed incredibly beautiful things about it. And then I made all the necessary arrangements and I was filled with an overwhelming sense of excitement. I don't really have such an opportunity at another school, I think. And here you learn what you actually want and not necessarily what you have to.
In this way, you will work step by step towards a plan in a very targeted manner. That could potentially be the diploma in the future, but it might also be, in my opinion, an increase in self-assurance, or I no longer have fear of failure, or I have found good tools to deal with my dyslexia, or I have undergone a transformation and become a more well-rounded individual, or I have developed improved skills for collaborating within a group setting. Whether I dare to present all at once now, all skills that are much less emphasized in a traditional school culture.
I have a considerable number of friends from other schools who are regular. Last year I had quite a hard time with that, for example, when I went to see friends from primary school, and they would then tell me what they all had to do, and then I think, I don't understand any of this at all. In subjects such as mathematics or something similar, I experienced a truly challenging time with that during that period. With that thought, are we really so far behind? So at that time, I was on the verge of attending a different school. Nevertheless, I am incredibly grateful that I ultimately chose not to pursue that option, because I also had a conversation about this with my coach, with my parents, all together, collectively, with the reasons why I would stay or why I would leave.
What level are you at? Don't you have homework? You can sometimes take a challenge home, but that's all.
They have to focus on the core subjects, which are Dutch, English and mathematics. But we try to put as much as possible in those challenges, in those projects that they write themselves. You can also do a project in English once and then you are just as good with English. In reality, that is actually incorporated and integrated into our education system in such a way that it becomes an integral part of our learning experience.
In the first year, you definitely don't have any tests, no homework, absolutely nothing. And later it will come more, but I think it will feel a bit less oppressive than at a regular school. When comparing my friends at home to myself, they are always like, oh, I have got another 2 on my math test, whereas I am still struggling to improve my scores. They may know more about mathematics, chemistry and such, but I personally think I know much more about myself, who I am, what I want, what I'm good at, what I'm not so good at.
Currently I have students in my coaching group covering a range of years from 1st to 5th year. So those are also 11-year-old students who are in class with children of 16, 17, so to speak, in a manner of speaking in a sense. With those older students, I notice that they dare to be more playful, know each other a little better, and laugh along with the 11-year-olds just as much. And they are additionally employed as specialists for the younger age groups.
When we started AGRA, I sometimes heard parents say that they found it to be like the 9th grade of primary school. I didn't know how to interpret that well. Later I realized it was a compliment. Because you also have such a Group 8 teacher all week. That sees you from Monday morning until Friday afternoon, and that has exactly one image. You enter, he's already seen how you talk about the bad day.
What I occasionally hear from parents, and not only one time but nearly every single year, is a parent stating, oh, I have my child back. He comes home again enthusiastically and no longer has stomach ache, no headache, which often comes from that oppressive part. And I have really already received that, yes, since I started working here. 4 or 5 times I have received that from parents. I think that is one of the biggest compliments a school can receive.
That goes to such an extent that at a certain point during such a school year, you receive communication from a student who has the audacity to express their thoughts. Mr. Conan, I see you more often than I see my own father, and by that he means it in a positive way, just to indicate how close that bond is, and that it has really become a bit like family, a real community.
It's probably easy to understand that through how the system has been designed. It's a design. It's like architecture. It's like a building. In Sydney, where I lived recently, I often use the Sydney Opera House as a metaphor of the Finnish education system. That there's nothing unnecessary there. It's a very plain, clean, simple, effective system.
The Finnish school system is much stronger than the Swedish. And I know that the Finns have their challenges. You shouldn't idolize it. But the system is stronger than the Swedish ones. When Sweden introduced these reforms that I'm very critical of, Finland didn't. And one of the effects, one of the consequences of these reforms that Sweden introduced in the 1990s was that the freedom in the teaching profession and the status as a teacher was decreased. And what you see is that we have far less people applying to become teacher than you have in Finland. So we also have a much bigger teaching shortage.
Preschool first 1 year and primary school 6 years, 3 years secondary education, but that's still like the comprehensive school. And then after that, when they turn 15 or 16 in that year, they apply either for the junior high or the vocational school.
Most children will go from
the primary school to the appointed secondary school, which is the nearby school. We have a principle that most children should go to the nearby school, near their home. We don't want kids to travel across the city to school.
We try to integrate and include all the children, regardless of where they come from, what their interests or talents are, in the same school, and not only the same school but also in the same classroom. So this is what we call inclusive education, and Finland has been one of the early nations and systems to implement this truly.
But there are also schools that have an emphasis on a certain subject. For example, one secondary school might have mathematics emphasis and another one has a sports emphasis and so on. And some kids want to go to those schools and then they can apply to those schools. Whether they get in is based on an aptitude test, not their grades.
In order to run the system like this, where you have all these different types of children in the classrooms that can be socially and cognitively also very kind of a mixed and diverse, requires a very different type of teachers, and that's why Finland is often used as an example of an education system that is built really on this strong professional foundation of teachers. The basic qualification in Finnish schools to teach is a research-based master's degree. So it means that you have to do your thesis, you have to do, you need to be prepared and educated to do research, you need to be able to understand and read, turn research findings into practice, which again is much less taking place in other countries.
Having to study for 5 years with the goal that you will be a teacher, you develop a mindset for teaching and you start to develop your professional identity. Hei, mais-krispies. Mitä on mais? Mitä on mais? Kun siinä yhdessä oli, että what you had eat for breakfast? Mais-krispies.
What's wrong with you? Pain. Pain in the head. Okay. What's wrong with you? Cough.
Okay. Hope it gets better soon.
Well done.
And I think that what makes this Finnish master's degree in teaching peculiar and special is the very closely integrated clinical practice as part of this degree. Just like in a medical, those who are familiar with the medical doctor's training. In Finland, we do exactly the same thing with all the teachers that we're teaching, that the teachers don't do their practice in any school over there. They do this clinical training with the master teachers in the universities teaching schools.
In a Finnish culture, the teachers are highly valued, and basically all the parents are trusting the teacher, and we have really autonomous system. So basically, the teacher can decide how to teach, what to teach.
We can make our own plans according to how we feel that we want to work and what suits the class that we work with.
I'm motivated to do this profession when I know that I have quite a lot of autonomy to choose what type of teaching methods, what type of teaching materials, what type of different exams or assessment types I use in my classroom. And I get the trust from the Finnish society, I get the trust from my colleagues and the trust from my headmaster that, of course, he is doing the best he can with this autonomy given by the Finnish system.
We don't have to show or make any lesson plans unless I want to for myself. Of course, we follow the curriculum, that's for sure. But like I said, that it's not very precise. It's not like in 5th grade this week I have to teach this thing. It doesn't say anything like that. It just says what topics need to be covered in the 5th grade.
All of these classrooms are furnished old office spaces. Usually the students have the option that if they want, they can, for example, in the mathematics classes, they can come to work in the sofas with a group. It's their option, they can choose it, or they can be in the classroom with the teacher. So that's something that the students can choose, and usually the teachers come around these sofas and help the students what they have problems with. There isn't these guidelines that you need to follow as a teacher in Finland, so that how much homework you give. For example, I personally don't give homework. I give these assignments that usually needs to be done during this 6-week course, and the students can choose at what timetable they actually do these assignments.
I highly appreciate this autonomy. I think I wouldn't bear that kind of like testing all the time and following somebody else's like times that now you, by the end of November, you have to do this and this and this, and then da 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 da. I would be really stressful. I mean, stressed about that.
Just to give you one example, what is the significance of this type of curriculum system that we still don't see after 25 years in many other countries. It is that you would very rarely, if ever, in Finnish schools hear teachers complaining that why do we need to teach this thing? Is this really what the kids need in the future or now? Because they can decide, they can change those things themselves.
The religion classroom. So if you are in the church, you have religion. If you are not in the church, you have to choose these ethics courses.
I hear this when I travel around the world, almost everywhere. The teachers are complaining that why do we need to teach this stuff when most of the kids don't really need it. You would not hear those things in Finland, because if teachers feel like this, they are able to change the content and they are able to change the teaching so that it's more meaningful and important for the students. When they visit my country and they go and see the schools for a week, they come back and say that there's nothing kind of amazing happening in the schools. And that's true, because the school is not the unit that makes Finnish education system different. It's the system design. If you have your children in an early childhood education, that normally in Finland starts at the age of about 3. I guess most 3-year-olds are in a kindergarten or preschool. There, by law, every child will have an individual learning plan, and by law, you need to engage these young people into these conversations about, what are you going to learn and what are the things that you are interested in doing. Just think about it. A 3-year-old will sit down with one of the parents or both of the parents and the teacher in a preschool and then have this conversation. And this continues all through the schooling. So I think that by the end of the basic school or primary school, that most Finnish children already have this experience that, I am part of this education process and I have an active role and I have opportunities to influence in, what I'm going to learn and how I'm going to learn, with whom I'm going to study these things increasingly. Yes, I would say that most young people in Finland today should experience that they should have this kind of a sense of democracy in the schooling at the level of the system.